David Thompson's hand trembled for just half a second before steadying with surgical precision around the wrist of the man in the $3,000 Italian suit. The silence in Charleston's most expensive restaurant was deafening, broken only by David's controlled breathing and the muffled sobs of the waitress pressed against the wall, her uniform torn at the shoulder. Bradley Thornton, a real estate mogul who owned half the city's skyscrapers, was pinned against the marble table by a 52-year-old cleaner who earned in a year what Bradley spent in one night. The other multimillionaire clients watched slack-jawed as David applied an arm lock that he clearly hadn't learned mopping bathrooms. His movements were fluid, precise, lethal, every angle calculated with the cold efficiency of someone trained to kill. The contrast was impossible. Faded blue uniform against Armani suit, calloused hands controlling wrists adorned with $100,000 Rolexes. Bradley tried to speak, but David increased pressure just enough to silence him. At table 15, an elegant 45-year-old woman watched with growing interest, as if she were witnessing the revelation of a secret she'd been searching for years. This story isn't about a simple cleaner defending a waitress. It's about a man carrying military secrets buried under years of social invisibility, secrets that are about to explode in ways that will change 3 lives forever. In 15 minutes, you'll discover why David's hands trembled for that half second, and why he should never have allowed his instincts to awaken. Because what happened that night at Le Jardin wasn't just an act of impulsive courage. It was the moment when a ghost from the U.S. Special Forces decided to emerge from the shadows to protect a young woman who reminded him of someone he couldn't save in Kandahar. And the woman watching from table 15? She was about to offer something David thought was impossible, a second chance to become the hero he used to be before the war broke his soul. But first you need to understand how a decorated veteran from America's most secret operations in Afghanistan ended up invisible, pushing a cleaning cart through halls where the American elite wastes on one meal what a working family earns in 3 months, 22 hours and 45 minutes. That was exactly how long David Thompson spent pretending he didn't exist before allowing himself to feel anything again. Every night, he entered Le Jardin at 11:15 p.m., 45 minutes after the last client finished their $200 meal, and worked until 6 a.m. cleaning every trace of extravagance. The restaurant closed at 10:30, but David waited in the employee parking lot, sitting in the back seat of his 2008 Honda Civic with 250,000 miles on it, looking at the crumpled photo of Sarah. His 16-year-old adopted daughter didn't know that the man who'd raised her since she was 12, when he'd promised his dying military best friend he'd be the girl's father, carried medals stored in a shoebox under his bed. To Sarah, David was simply the dad who worked nights so she could study during the day, the man who never missed a school meeting even running on 3 hours of sleep. The 2-bedroom apartment they shared cost $1,200 monthly, exactly David's salary. They lived on discount coupons, simple meals, and the silent love of a man who'd lost the ability to talk about feelings after an improvised bomb killed his entire unit in 2019. Sarah's cardiac diagnosis came on a rainy Tuesday: dilated cardiomyopathy, a congenital condition requiring immediate surgery costing $180,000. The basic health plan David could afford only covered routine consultations. He'd spent the last 2 weeks calling hospitals, assistance programs, veterans organizations. Each no was a stab in the chest of a man who'd already sacrificed everything for his country. Sarah didn't know the severity. David had only told her she needed a simple procedure and that he was working out the insurance details. She trusted him completely, the same trust her biological mother had placed when David promised to be a father, even without having children of his own. While pushing the cleaning cart through marble corridors, David calculated 2 weeks to gather impossible money, doctors talking about waiting lists Sarah didn't have time to face, and him being paid $1,200 to be invisible in a place where people spent the same amount on a bottle of wine. Irony that didn't make him laugh. The war had taught David to survive on little, but hadn't taught him how to watch his daughter die from lack of money. Emma Rodriguez balanced 4 plates on her tray when she noticed table 12 was getting louder with each bottle of 2010 Chateau Margaux she served. Bradley Thornton, 45 years old, impeccably cut gray hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, was celebrating a $50 million real estate deal with 3 associates equally intoxicated by power and expensive alcohol. Emma, 22 years old, was studying nursing at community college, paying each semester with tips earned, serving people who made in an hour what she received in a month. She knew the signs. Rich men, drunk, accustomed to getting anything with money, looking at her like she was part of the menu. Bradley had called her by the wrong name 3 times. Jennifer, Amanda, sweetheart, as if waitresses were interchangeable. When she politely corrected him, he laughed too loud. "Sorry, princess, it's hard to remember all your names." His friends laughed like well-dressed hyenas. Emma swallowed her anger, thinking about tuition due next week. She needed this job. She needed the tips. She needed to endure small humiliations to build a big future. David, cleaning nearby tables, watched the interaction with growing discomfort. Emma's posture, tense shoulders, forced smile, slightly faster steps, reminded him of rookie soldiers trying to appear brave before their first mission. He recognized fear disguised as professionalism. The situation escalated when Emma brought dessert. Bradley, intoxicated by the combination of financial power and premium alcohol, decided he'd bought the right to touch. "You know, Emma, you're too pretty to be waiting tables. How about sitting here with us? I'm sure I can arrange something better for a smart girl like you." His hand moved toward her waist as he spoke, predatory smile revealing professionally whitened teeth. Emma stepped back, keeping the tray between them as an improvised shield. "Thank you for the offer, Mr. Thornton, but I need to finish my shift." The polite refusal infuriated Bradley. Men like him rarely heard no from people who depended on their money to survive. "Listen here, girl, you know how much I spent in this place today? Over $3,000. That's more than you make in 2 months serving little plates." The other men at the table laughed, encouraging the behavior. David stopped cleaning. His hands, trained to disarm explosives and neutralize hostile targets, trembled imperceptibly. Bradley's voice echoed memories of corrupt officers in Afghanistan, men who used position to abuse vulnerable civilians. David's breathing became more controlled, systematic, a pattern he recognized from moments before entering combat. "I'm not asking, I'm ordering." Bradley stood up, swaying, taller and more intimidating, deliberately blocking Emma's path. "People like you exist to serve people like me. It's time you learned about gratitude." He grabbed Emma's arm with enough force to leave marks, pulling her toward the empty chair. Emma let out a whimper of pain, the tray falling to the floor with a metallic crash that echoed through the silent restaurant. Other clients watched the scene with the passive discomfort of those who prefer not to get involved in others' drama. David felt something awaken in his chest, not anger, but cold, calculated clarity he hadn't felt in years. At table 15, Victoria Sterling watched everything with growing attention. CEO of Sterling Security Solutions, she'd spent her early career years in military operations before inheriting her father's security company. She recognized a fighter's body language. David's posture had subtly changed, weight redistributed on his feet, shoulders aligned, eyes calculating distances and approach angles like a soldier assessing a battlefield. "Please let me go," Emma whispered, trying to free herself without causing a bigger scene. Bradley squeezed her arm harder. "You're going to sit here and show some respect for who pays your salary, understand?" It was at that moment that David crossed the invisible line between observer and participant. David moved with the silent precision of a nocturnal predator, crossing the hall in measured steps that made no sound on the polished marble. Every movement was economical, calculated, lethal in its efficiency. "Take your hands off her." His voice was low, controlled, carrying authority that made Bradley hesitate for a second. The tone wasn't a request or plea. It was a military order given by someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Bradley turned, still holding Emma, surprised by the unexpected interruption. "Who the hell do you think you are, cleaner? Go back to your mop and let the adults talk." The contempt in Bradley's voice was visceral, the kind of arrogance David had encountered in civilian contractors in the Middle East, men who considered soldiers disposable tools. David didn't respond with words. In a fluid movement that lasted exactly 3 seconds, he applied specific pressure to the nerve point in Bradley's wrist, forcing him to release Emma immediately, then spun the businessman and pinned him against the table, face pressed against the cold marble. The technique was Special Forces standard for hostile civilian control. Effective, non-lethal, but absolutely dominant. The other men stood up alarmed, but David had already mapped their positions, calculated their probable movements. "Stay where you are." The command was said in a tone that didn't admit disobedience. Bradley tried to struggle, but David applied additional pressure at the exact point to cause discomfort without permanent damage. "You don't know who I am. I own half this city. I'll destroy your life." David leaned in, whispering close to Bradley's ear with a voice that carried echoes of interrogations in war zones. "I know exactly who you are. A coward predator who uses money to hurt those who can't defend themselves." Victoria Sterling rose from her table discreetly, approaching the situation with intense professional interest. During 15 years commanding security operations in conflict zones, she'd seen thousands of ex-military personnel. Most were predictable, either brutes without subtlety or broken veterans who trembled at the slightest conflict. David was different. He controlled 4 hostile men without excessive violence, protected the victim, maintained total command of the situation, and demonstrated technical precision that only came from elite training. His hands weren't shaking. His breathing was controlled. His eyes scanned the environment, identifying potential threats and escape routes, behavior of a special operator on active mission. "Let me go now, or you'll never work in Charleston again," Bradley shouted, trying to use financial intimidation as his last weapon. David released him gradually, but remained positioned between the businessman and Emma, every muscle prepared for instant action. "Emma, go to the kitchen. Call the police if necessary." His voice maintained the professional calm of a commander giving orders in a combat zone. Bradley stood up swaying, straightening his wrinkled suit, face red with humiliation and rage. "You have no idea what you just did, you piece of crap cleaner. I'm going to destroy you. I'll make sure you never get a job in this city again." David didn't respond to the threats, maintaining defensive posture while watching Bradley and his associates head to the exit making empty threats. Victoria noticed that David didn't relax until he was absolutely certain everyone had left the establishment. Victoria approached David with measured steps, recognizing she was facing exceptional talent disguised as social invisibility. "Special forces?" The question was direct, no beating around the bush. David looked at her with genuine surprise. Few civilians recognized elite military training just by observing behavior. "How do you know?" Victoria smiled for the first time that night. "I've commanded Sterling Security Solutions for 15 years. Before that, I served in military operations in Iraq. I recognize advanced combat technique when I see it." "How many tours of duty?" David hesitated, instinctively distrustful of revealing personal information, then decided on honesty. 3. Afghanistan. Special operations." Victoria nodded, mentally connecting the dots. "PTSD?" David lowered his eyes. "Severe. That's why I work nights alone. I can't handle crowds or loud noises during the day." Victoria recognized the pattern. Special operations veterans frequently developed isolation strategies to manage psychological trauma. "Do you have family?" David unconsciously touched the pocket where he kept Sarah's photo. "A daughter, 16 years old. Adopted." Victoria observed the protective gesture, the way David spoke about the girl, genuine paternal love mixed with deep concern. "Financial problems?" David didn't answer immediately. Male pride conflicting with desperate need. Victoria waited patiently, recognizing signs of a proud man facing impossible circumstances. Finally, David whispered, "She needs heart surgery. $180,000. I have 2 weeks." Victoria made an instant decision based on 15 years of evaluating human character under pressure. Victoria extended a business card engraved on premium paper. "Sterling Security Solutions. I need men like you. Executive protection operations, international security, high-level consulting. Starting salary, $200,000 annually." David took the card with hands that trembled slightly, not from fear, but from unexpected hope. "Ma'am, I have severe PTSD, panic attacks, chronic insomnia, difficulty with civilian authority. I lost my last security job because of an episode." Victoria shook her head. "David, my company has a medical team specialized exclusively in special operations veterans, advanced psychological treatment, cutting-edge medication therapy, gradual reintegration program, all at no cost, part of the benefits package." David looked at the card, calculating mentally. 200,000 annually meant 16,000 monthly, 50 times his current salary. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Victoria observed Emma, who had returned from the kitchen and now watched them with obvious gratitude. "I just watched you risk everything to protect a stranger. Perfect military technique, absolute emotional control, genuine protective instinct. I've been looking for that kind of character for years. David thought about Sarah, the surgery, medical bills, sleepless nights calculating financial impossibilities. What if I can't handle the pressure? What if the panic attacks come back? Victoria smiled with the understanding of someone who'd commanded traumatized soldiers. Then we'll work with it. Veterans aren't disposable, David. You're rare resources who deserve proper investment. For the first time in 4 years, David felt something he'd forgotten existed. Genuine hope that the future could be different from the present. 3 months later, David Thompson was in Victoria Sterling's office on the 30th floor of a skyscraper that dominated Charleston's skyline, wearing a discreet but well-cut suit, discussing security strategies for protecting visiting diplomats. The transformation had been gradual but profound. Specialized therapy 3 times a week with a military psychologist, appropriate medication for anxiety and insomnia, reintegration program that respected his PTSD triggers while utilizing his unique skills. Sarah had undergone heart surgery 2 weeks after that night at Le Jardin. Sterling Security covered all medical costs as part of the executive benefits package. The girl now knew the truth about her father's military past and was proud to have a hero as an adoptive father. David had discovered that hiding his military history didn't protect anyone. It was by using his experience to help others that he found inner peace. Victoria had been patient but firm, building a personalized program that allowed David to work with his condition rather than against it. Night operations became his specialty. Discreet executive protection, security for high-profile events, consulting for companies with specific threats. His military instincts, once a source of shame and isolation, were now valuable tools that saved lives and protected important people. Emma Rodriguez had graduated nursing school 6 months earlier than planned, thanks to a full scholarship provided discreetly by the Sterling Foundation. She didn't know that David had suggested to Victoria that they investigate talented young workers facing financial difficulties for education. Emma now worked at Charleston's Children's Hospital, caring for children with heart conditions. Irony not lost on David, who saw a poetic connection between saving Emma and her now saving children like Sarah. Bradley Thornton was facing multiple sexual harassment charges after 6 other women gained courage to denounce him publicly. Sterling Security had provided legal and physical protection for victims who decided to speak, ensuring that financial intimidation wouldn't silence justice. Bradley's real estate empire was crumbling under federal investigations for corruption, money laundering, and predatory business practices. David watched the developments with professional satisfaction, not personal revenge, but systemic justice working properly. Victoria had taught that true victory wasn't destroying enemies, but building systems that protected vulnerable people from future predators. Sterling Security now offered free services to small businesses facing intimidation from larger corporations, a program David had proposed based on his personal experience with class injustice. David still visited Le Jardin occasionally, not as an employee, but as a client, taking Sarah for special dinners that celebrated milestones in her medical recovery. The restaurant manager, who had witnessed the impossible transformation of the invisible cleaner into a respected executive, always treated them with special deference. Sarah loved these visits, not because of the expensive food, but because she saw the genuine pride in her father's eyes when former co-workers greeted him with respect. David had learned that personal worth wasn't measured by bank account or social position, but by the courage to do what was right when no one was watching. He now employed other veterans in his Sterling Security division. Ex-military personnel who needed second chances, honest workers whom society had discarded, talented people hidden in jobs that didn't recognize their potential. Victoria had created a pipeline for identifying wasted talent, a program David personally coordinated. Every new hire received the same treatment David had received: complete medical evaluation, psychological support, personalized development program, and most importantly, respect for human dignity, regardless of professional history. The company became known not only for excellence in security, but for the practice of finding diamonds in unlikely places and polishing them until they shone with their own light. 2 years after that night that changed everything, David Thompson stood on the stage of a national veterans conference, sharing his transformation story to an audience of ex-military personnel facing similar difficulties. His voice was firm, confident, carrying authority born from genuine experience. PTSD doesn't define who you are. The skills you acquired serving your country haven't disappeared. They just need an adequate channel to express themselves again. Sarah, now 18 and healthy, watched from the front row with radiant pride on her face. She had chosen to study business administration with a focus on human resources, inspired by her father's transformation and Victoria's work in finding wasted human potential. David spoke about second chances, about a society that discards veterans instead of investing in their potential, about companies like Sterling Security that proved it was possible to profit while doing good. After the speech, veterans approached sharing similar stories: talent wasted in invisible jobs, families struggling financially, dreams abandoned out of survival necessity. David distributed Sterling Security cards, but more importantly, offered hope based on concrete evidence. Transformation was possible when the right people invested in the right people for the right reasons. Sterling Security had become a national model for successful veteran integration into the corporate market. Victoria and David developed a program replicated by other companies across the country, proving that investing in people discarded by society wasn't just morally correct, but financially intelligent. Emma, now pediatric nursing supervisor, volunteered as a mentor for young people from working families seeking higher education. Bradley Thornton was serving an 8-year sentence for multiple charges, his confiscated assets distributed among victims and charitable organizations. Lejardin had implemented a zero-tolerance policy for harassment, mandatory training for staff on workplace dignity, and fairer wages for service team. David had learned that hiding potential out of fear never protected anyone. It was by sharing unique gifts that each person found true purpose. Sarah grew up understanding that true wealth wasn't in bank numbers, but in relationships built on mutual respect and shared values. David's true legacy wasn't military medals stored in a shoebox, but lives transformed by believing each person deserved an opportunity to show their best. Victoria had proven that conscious capitalism worked. Prosperous company, fulfilled employees, improved community, more just society. The final lesson was simple but revolutionary. When good people receive adequate opportunities, everyone wins.